Originally, I wanted to make an analysis video about a different racing game, but I couldn't do it. So I am analyzing a different game. Oh, and just in advance, sorry about the choppiness and the weird frame rate issues with the video. I have no idea what's going on. I'm really sorry. I tried to fix it and I couldn't fix it. I'm so sorry for what you have to look at right now. But anyways, I'm analyzing a different game. Today we're analyzing a game called Race, the WTCC game. Hi everyone, as always Patrick here. If you're already subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications, otherwise YouTube won't tell you if I posted anything. If you are new to the channel, make sure you watch until the very end and consider subscribing if you like it. Okay, Race the WTCC game. Race the WTCC game was developed and published by Simbin Studios in 2006. They are known for Volvo the game, which is a game that I have also analyzed on this channel. Okay, you know the drill, time to analyze the graphics. For a game released in 2006, graphically it could have been better. I mean, you have some good qualities about the graphics, like sharp textures and good texture work in general, nice, or should I say decent special effects, but a lot of effects are missing. You've probably noticed already that when I'm braking, there are no tire marks at all. The game doesn't actually have a lot of options when it comes to the graphical effects, but it does have a lot of different options you can choose from. More about that in a moment. Simply put, the cars look nice, some of the textures look nice, some textures and objects could use some work, like trees. Some of the trees are cardboard cutouts, and I guess yeah, even the people are cardboard cutouts. And in 2006, that was unacceptable. I'm sorry, but any game in mid 2000s that still uses the cardboard cutouts for humans and other objects, I don't like that. But there is one thing that I really don't like when it comes to the graphics. Graphically, the environments look very empty. You can't really see it now because I'm racing on a track that looks decent, but most tracks in the game just feel very empty and bland. Like there's nothing you can spectate. There are a lot of there's the tracks, there's the track, there's the asphalt, there's the track you're racing on, but there's not much else on different tracks. I mean, there are no trees, there are no objects, there's nothing that caught your eye, that gets your attention. And yeah, my main takeaway for the graphics is the graphics aren't bad, but they could have been better. What about the options? Well, it's a game released in 2006, so it's gonna miss some things. Like I've said, there aren't a lot of graphical effects you can customize, but you can customize other options. The game does support widescreen resolutions with minor issues. Same with the multi-monitor setup, ultra widescreen, and the game runs at 4K. So that's also good. There is anti-aliasing, there is VSync if you really need it, and the game does run at high frame rates. And the launcher allows any refresh rate. And if you're wondering why my video is pretty choppy, that's because, how do I say it? Well, the launcher allows any refresh rate, and the refresh rate I'm using is 60, which, let's be honest, nowadays in 2023, 60 is not ideal, but unfortunately that's what I have to work with. So I think that's the reason why the recordings looks very choppy and just laggy. Again, I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry you have to watch this footage, but I don't think there's anything I can do. Funny thing is, it only happens when I'm recording. When I'm not recording, the game runs perfectly fine, so yeah. And the frame rate also gets worse when there are a lot of vehicles, and I mean a lot of vehicles. When there are like 20 plus vehicles and I'm recording, the footage is unwatchable. You'll see what I mean in the moment. But anyway, there are some problems with the options, as you would expect. Well, besides the whole missing graphical effects thing, anisotropic filtering seems to be missing, and that makes the game a lot blurry, so that's not a good thing. But there is an FOV slider, and I have to ask you this. Remember in my Volvo the game analysis video when I said that, uh, well, that when you set your frame rate to FOV too high, um, your some objects disappear and sometimes you can see through cars. Well, this game has the same problem, except the difference is in Race WTCC game, you won't really notice this that much because objects are further away from each other, and the only time you really notice this is when the car is right behind you. So you can safely play the game at the highest FOV and you shouldn't encounter any issues. Well, except for the cars being close thing, but that's pretty much it when it comes to the problem. The funny thing is, the PC Gaming Wiki says that the game doesn't have an FOV slider, while in reality the game actually does have one. I think this is the first time where PC Gaming Wiki didn't do their research. Regardless, there are a lot of options when it comes to important stuff, but there's not a lot of options when it comes to not important stuff like effects and other stuff. Yeah, what about the stability? Well, the game didn't crash, it didn't lag, didn't stutter. I'm not talking about the recording here, I'm talking about my experience while I was recording and while I wasn't recording, because yes, I was also playing the game when I wasn't recording. And I can safely say that when I wasn't recording, the game ran perfectly fine. I didn't have any issues. So overall, the PC is good. Just keep in mind that when you are going to record a game, you might encounter issues, but most gamers don't record their gameplays, so it should be fine for you. Okay, it's time to talk about the story. Well, there's no story. And I know I've said this many times before, but I'm perfectly okay with this. When you make a racing game like this one you're watching right now, you don't need a story for the game to be good. You can totally ignore that aspect. As long as you focus on the gameplay itself, it will be fine. Speaking of the gameplay, it's time to talk about it. Let's start with the handling and the physics. When it comes to the handling, well, the cars feel pretty heavy, but I should mention that every setting is customizable. You can customize your basic assists, ABS, traction control and all that stuff, but you can also customize just other parts of your cars like suspensions, brakes and many other stuff. So depending on your settings, your experience will be different. And I was playing on the default settings because I just don't like messing around with those settings. I find it a waste of time. Maybe you don't, but that's how I feel. What can I say? There are 3 difficulty modes. Each mode comes with different settings. There's Novice, Semi-Pro, and Pro. I've tried all of them, and I will try my best to explain them to you. Even though I'm not very good at explaining how difficulties really work, but I will still try anyways. So the footage you're seeing right now, I was playing on Pro difficulty. In Pro difficulty, you have most uh, assists turned off or lowered or toned down, so they're not very strong. Even if you set a preset, because those presets are customizable, there's no penalty. It doesn't show that you chose a custom preset. It will still stay with the difficulty. So like I was saying, I was playing on Pro, and even if you change a single thing, it will not change to custom settings. It will still stay at the Pro difficulty. And yeah, on Pro difficulty and to an extent Semi-Pro, the handling and the physics are pretty much the same. Also, yeah, the physics. Except for the Novice difficulty, they are the same across Semi-Pro and Pro difficulties. This is a track racing game, so naturally your cars have a lot of downforce, they stick to the ground, and they barely lift off. So they feel heavy. They're also pretty hard to turn. You need to know when to turn, as in the tracks are built in a way that it's hard to turn, and you have to think on when to brake and when to do other things. Brakes are necessary at certain parts because there are a lot of sharp turns depending on the track. The track you're seeing right now is Monza, or Monza, I don't know how to pronounce this. You know, one of the most recognizable tracks in the world. So for this one you don't have to brake as much because most turns are pretty soft, I should say. I'm not sure if that's the correct word, but what I meant to say is that, well, this is not it's not a hard track to master. A lot of easy turns, a lot of long straights, like this one right here, and yeah. So the game strongly recommends you choose a different setting for different kind of track. And it's understandable why. Without doing this, your game can become pretty hard when you don't know what you're doing. And yeah, not sure what to say about the physics and the handling, really. So I guess I'll talk about the tracks. There are 10 tracks in the game, and every single track is related to a track that exists in the real world. Sorry for the stutter. This right now, as I've said before, you are watching Monza, whatever. And yeah, all the tracks are fairly accurate to their real life counterparts. And this is the part of the video when I should say, if you have played any game that features official track racing like Need for Speed Shift or Superstars V8 Racing or Superstars V8 Next Challenge, you've raced on those tracks, you know those tracks, and most importantly, you have raced on those tracks before. I know I kind of repeated myself there, but I always repeat myself. Try to switch it up so you wouldn't notice, but now that I've said it, you have definitely noticed. Anyway, the tracks are fairly accurate to their original counterparts, or real-life counterparts, I should say, and racing on them is actually pretty fun, despite the high difficulty I was playing. Yeah, I have to repeat myself one more time. I was playing on the pro difficulty. So what's the difference between the difficulties? Well, there is a difference. I'm just not really sure if it's noticeable. Novice difficulty is obviously the easiest difficulty. You have all assists turned on, not a lot of opponents, you're racing against 5 opponents only. And fun fact, every opponent drops the frame rate by a lot, so yeah, you can race against 5 opponents and you'll be totally fine. There are also some flag rules, like if you cut or crash into someone, you get yellow flags, black flags, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, there's not much to say about these flags. You can also set how much damage your car takes in every difficulty. Again, every difficulty is customizable. I'm trying to show you what the default difficulties are like, but I don't actually have a lot to say about them. Novice is basically for the new players that don't want the game to be too hard. Obviously, what I should mention is that every difficulty has different set of laps. For the novice difficulty, you have 3 laps, but over time the lap count increases to 4, 5, even 6. And so at the beginning you will have like 3 laps, then you have 4, then 5 and 6. That's how it works. Same goes with other difficulties. In semi-pro you start with 5 laps and then it grows over time. And you also race against more opponents. You race against 12 opponents in the semi-pro difficulty. Your assists are toned down. You can still customize the flags. The opponents are faster and their turning ability is better. Yes, the opponent's strength has a slider. There's from 80% to 100%. Novice is 80, semi-pro is 90, and pro is 100. However, when you set the difficulty higher, when you set it to pro, you can't put it lower. You can put it lower than 100. On semi-pro, you can't put it lower than 90, and on novice, you can't put it any lower than 80. You can still put it higher if you want, but I don't recommend doing that in this game. The opponents are kinda too perfect at times, especially on pro difficulty. Well, this pro difficulty, I'm telling you. So now that I've mentioned pro difficulty, let's quickly talk about it. Pro difficulty, our assists are massively toned down. You race about 24 opponents, and when you do this, your frame rate is terrible, so I suggest toning it down. Flags are full. Flag rolls are full. Surprisingly, you can still customize them. Basically, every difficulty is pretty difficult, even the notice difficulty, surprisingly, even though it's supposed to be the easiest. Again, you can customize the difficulties, so it's completely fine if you want to customize them. And yeah, but Simbin wanted to make strong opponents, but strong opponents doesn't automatically make the game good. There's the laps problem. And like I've said before, with each difficulty the lap count increases. Unfortunately, you cannot decrease the lap count. So when you're racing at pro difficulty, what can I say? You will have to go through 9 laps and the lap count increases, so you have 10, 11 and 12 laps. 12 laps of the same thing over and over again. This is my problem with track racing games. They're always kind of the same. Yes, track selection is different, but you're just doing the same thing over and over again. Some games allow you to customize laps, some games don't allow you to do this. So in the case of Race the WTCC game, where you can't customize the lap count, the game becomes very tedious very quickly. The gameplay is solid, don't get me wrong, you will get some enjoyment out of this, but after a while, after you, let's say you are like 3 laps in, or 5 laps in, and then you look at the counter and it's like, 5 or 6 out of 9 laps, and then you think to yourself, it's not over yet. I hate this thing where the higher the difficulty, the more laps you have to go through. This is artificially increasing the game time. Now, the game itself isn't actually very long, there are only 10 tracks, and depending on the difficulty, it would take you from 4 hours to about 10 hours at best, depending on difficulty. But regardless, I just hate the fact that some games do this. Not every game, but some games just do this. My professional advice: don't increase the lap count, with difficulty. Okay, it just makes the game way too long. The game becomes boring, and after a while you will have that feeling that you will want to play something else. Don't do this. What else can I possibly say? I don't know. The handling is decent. I mean, the game tries to be a simcade, but I found it more arcadey than simcadey. Well, this every car behaves differently. I'm using Peugeot. I have no idea how to pronounce that brand. Sorry. 407, and what can I say? It controls fine. As a matter of fact, every car controls fine. Every car is different, has different stats, controls a bit differently. Sometimes they are heavy, sometimes they are less heavy, but they are still heavy nonetheless. The physics are also fine. The cars stick to the ground, they don't lift off. Sometimes they spin out, even if you have assist turned off, but that's when you brake badly, or you make a small mistake. That's when they spin out. Sometimes you can lose your lead in stupid ways like this because you just didn't brake hard enough. Also, speaking of brakes, the brakes are kind of progressive. It starts off very weak, but then the brakes get stronger the more you hold the brake key. So yeah, that's also something you have to consider. And also, there's no handbrake in this game at all. If you want to do sharp turns, you can't do sharp turns. You have to slow down, slowly drive through the turn, and then you can speed up. It's not ideal. I'm guessing this was intentional, but even then, I don't really like this. Actually, you know what? I'll just talk about the bad stuff right now. Most of the bad stuff I mentioned before are going to be mentioned here, except I don't want to repeat myself, so the bad stuff. Like I've said, the graphics could have been better. Despite the fact that you can customize the difficulty, I think the opponent's strength should be toned down. Sometimes they can catch up to you really quickly, sometimes they can make perfect turns. This is excusable for the pro difficulty, but for other difficulties it should be toned down. I've had many problems when I had one very minor mistake, not a big mistake, very minor, like I took the turn the wrong way and I got overtaken almost immediately, depending on the difficulty. Sometimes it was immediately. Yeah, the environments are also pretty bland. As you would expect, when you go off track, you lose tons of speed. It's not a massive slowdown, but even on novice difficulty, your opponents can overtake you pretty quickly. I don't know. Maybe the good stuff now? The game does have a good sense of speed. Sadly, there are not many effects that can amplify this feeling, but the game does have a good sense of speed. It's not amazing, but it's good. Regardless of what I had with the heavy handling and physics, they are decent. They work as intended. I didn't encounter any glitches with them. I never really got angry when it happened. So yeah, there are times when the game tries to make it up to you by doing cool things. I should also mention that the best thing are the extra stuff, extra game modes. You have duos. You and your rival race against each other. Whoever crosses the finish line first wins. You know the deal. There are also practice modes and time trials, both self-explanatory. Yeah, this race the WTCC game is an experience, the experience of all time. In conclusion, Race the WTCC game is a game that exists. Okay, I'm actually that's not the actual conclusion. It's not a game that just exists. It's an okay game. It's an enjoyable experience. The tracks are, the real life tracks, something that you would see in real life. I mean, Monza, that should tell you all. When it comes to the tracks, that should tell you all. Sorry, sometimes I just stutter a lot. Anyway, the tracks are well designed because they are the replicas of their real life counterparts. The physics and the handling is also decent, not amazing, just decent. The damage model could use some work. The damage model does have dents. They do show dents and other physical damages that can affect your car, but it's nothing really special. Even if you set the difficulty to the highest. Again, this is something that can be also customized, so no worries. The extra modes are also fun to play. The career mode is solid. I wouldn't say it's amazing. It's pretty basic when there's no story, but it's enjoyable. And yeah, the graphics could have been better, and that's it when it comes to the conclusion, really. This is a game that you can play and you can easily buy. Despite the fact that the game uses licensed vehicles, this game is still available on digital stores. Well, more specifically, it's available on Steam. When I'm recording this, there's a sale going on. The game is on sale. You can easily buy it for a cheap price. But even then, I strongly suggest buying the game on sale, because if you pay full price for the game, you're getting ripped off. This is the game that I'm pretty sure you'll enjoy, but then again, that comes to a preference. If you like track racing games, the games where you are racing on official tracks, you will enjoy this game. If you want an actual simulator or an arcade experience, I suggest playing something else. Like, for example, Assetto Corsa, Dirt Rally, when it comes to simulations, or just other arcade games. But still, I can recommend this game. The game is fun. Like I've said, it's on sale right now. Go play it, and I hope you'll have fun with the game. But that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say in this analysis video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Just